You take care. Thank you, Chris. See
I'll
you
be
soon.
watching.
All right, thanks. This is CNN Tonight, everyone. I'm Don Lemon. Thank you so much for watching. We do have some breaking news. It is on the Mueller investigation. The president says that he's going to leave decisions on Mueller's report to the Justice Department. But there's also this, it's a pretty ominous quote, and it's from the Daily Caller, that interview with the president. And here's what it says. It says, I could have gotten involved in this. I could have terminated everything. I could have ended everything. I've chosen to stay out of it, but I had the right to, as you know. I had the right, if I wanted to, end everything. I could have just said, that's enough. Many people thought that's what I should do. Well, and if that sounds familiar, it really should. Because it's clearly something the president had on his mind for quite a while. This is in August. In August, he told Reuters that he decided to stay out of the investigation. But he went on to say, quote, now I don't have to stay out. I can go in and I could do whatever. I could run it if I want. Remember that? And in November, he said this is a day after the midterms.
I could fire everybody right now, but I don't want to stop it because politically I don't like stopping it.
Yeah.
More on all that in just a moment. Trust me, we're going to have more on all that. The president found time to do that interview today, right in the middle of being mad at just about everyone, about just about everything. Okay, so the Democrats, he's mad at them, mad at the Democrats and members of his own party who are working to figure out how to avoid another government shutdown on February 15th, a little over 2 weeks away. The president tweeting this, he said, if the committee of Republicans and Democrats now meeting on border security is not discussing or contemplating wall or physical barrier, they are wasting their time. Speaker Nancy Pelosi's response, asked if the president should stay out of the negotiations. The speaker, without even bothering to break a stride, says he should sign the bill. Play it.
Should the president stay out?
Sign the bill.
Just kept walking. Doesn't look like the speaker is planning to back down anytime soon. But the president tells the Daily Caller tonight, quote, without our involvement, a deal is not going to get done. The president is also pretty mad over the latest unflattering volumes in what could we call the Trump book club, okay? He called former staffer Cliff Sims, the author of the latest White House tell-all, nothing more than a gopher. He has yet to weigh in on the new book about Mar-a-Lago. I'm going to talk to the author just a little later on in the show. There it is right there. So, hat tip to the Washington Post's Josh Dawsey, who says sources have told him the president is complaining extensively about that Sims book. But of course, he's really mad at his own handpicked intelligence chiefs. If you thought President Trump would rise above that when they dare to publicly contradict him, you don't know Donald Trump. President tweeting just today, as usual, tweeting that his own intel chiefs, quote, seem to be extremely passive and naive, and adding perhaps intelligence should go back to school. Good one. Sources telling CNN the president was seething and called out DNI Dan Coats by name as he watched TV highlights of yesterday's testimony. So just imagine how the president's intelligence briefing went this morning. Coats usually does that briefing, by the way, and it's unclear whether he did today. A White House official says the president doesn't plan to fire Coats, but seething really isn't good. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer sending a letter to DNI Coats tonight calling the president's criticism extraordinarily inappropriate and saying it will undermine public confidence. And what about that tweet? The president calling his intel chiefs naive. You know what's really naive? This.
We have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly.
Well, just 1 month later, 4 Americans were killed in a suicide bombing in Syria, a bombing believed to have been carried out by ISIS. It's not the first time he's claimed to know more than the experts. And if history is any guide, it won't be the last.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
While this president is mad at just about everybody, what is he doing? What is he doing? Think about it. Looks like he's having a whole lot of executive time behind closed doors in the White House. Today was the 5th day in a row without a public appearance by the president. His schedule so far this week, pretty light. Take a look at it. The official schedule released by the White House shows the president has had 2 meetings this week. 2. One was a lunch meeting with Vice President Mike Pence on Monday. The other was that intelligence briefing this morning. In a late addition to his schedule on Monday night, the president attended a fundraiser at his own Trump International Hotel, also with the vice president. That event closed to the press. We also learned that the president spoke today with the interim president of Venezuela. But there are still hours and hours and hours of time unaccounted for. So it makes you wonder, what is the president of the United States doing with all that time? With so little on his schedule? No official way for anyone to know how this president spends his days. Unofficially, though, there is Twitter. And we know this president tweets from early morning until late night. But I want you to remember during the 2016 campaign, then candidate Trump said he's going to work really, really hard.
I will be your champion, and I will work hard to be your champion.
It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of time. I wouldn't leave the White House.
Work, straighten it out, get it done, fix it up, make it great. If I win, we're going to work really hard.
Wow. Trump International Hotel this week. All those times, Mar-a-Lago. A lot of time at Mar-a-Lago. You've got to wonder, with everything going on, with all the storms buffeting this White House, is this president working hard? Or hardly working? President Trump saying he'll leave decisions on Robert Mueller's report to the Justice Department, but he also says he could end the investigation if he wanted to. Lots to talk about. Susan Glasser's here. Douglas Brinkley is. President Trump talking in depth about Robert Mueller's Russia investigation in a new interview on a day that started with him reportedly seething while watching coverage of his intel chiefs contradicting him on Capitol Hill. A lot to get to, so let's discuss it now. Susan Glasser, Douglas Brinkley, both here. Good evening to you. Hope you guys are staying warm. It is cold out there for a big part of the country. Susan, to you first. President Trump talking about Mueller in that new interview tonight. It's to the Daily Caller. He says he'll leave it to the Justice Department on how to handle the Mueller report. Does that signal anything to you?
Well, first of all, what it signals is the continued uncertainty after the other day when the acting attorney general, as you know, said publicly, well, first of all, Mueller's almost done. Second of all, suggesting there might be some sort of a review process in the Justice Department before it is sent up to Capitol Hill. So there remains this incredible cloud and question over whether and in what way we're going to see the full work product of this investigation. President Trump, as you pointed out, has held out the possibility of just abruptly firing Mueller at any moment. I think most people think that moment has come and gone for Trump to be able to do so. But it's fascinating to me that he's still talking about it now. I think this is part of the overall temper tantrum, it seems to me, that President Trump has been having over the last week. He's just so desperate to assert his power to do things after having been humiliated, really, by the Democratic Congress.
Over the whole wall and government
yeah.
shutdown thing. Douglas, President Trump says that he could have terminated the investigation if he wanted to. I read the quote there where he says that I could have gotten involved. I could have terminated everything. I could have ended everything. I've chosen to stay out of it, but I had the right to, right? So that was a quote from the Daily Caller. Even going as far as saying many people thought that's what he should do. Is the president looking for a pat on the back for doing the right thing?
I guess that's what he's looking for. It is like Richard Nixon feeling I should have burned the tapes. I could have burned them, and I wouldn't have been in the hot water that I'm in. If Donald Trump wanted to fire Mueller, he should have done it and reaped the consequences. Instead, it's more of this whining wimp factor that people are talking about with him. He's complaining about his tough, lot in life. He's unfocused, not sure what to do. He's stewing in anger in a White House. He's attacked about everybody of value in his administration. He's now denouncing Dan Coats, one of the really leading intelligence analysts of our era right now, and somebody that everybody agrees tells it to you straight. I mean, imagine having, Don, your intelligence leader tell you, the public, that Donald Trump's wrong about North Korea, wrong about Iran, wrong about Syria. Now he's afraid to fire Coats, but maybe he will. And now it's the Justice Department. This is a president unglued. He's feeling the pressure of the Mueller report. And I think the arrest of Roger Stone, he's known for decades, not years, is just in the power of the FBI, the way they apprehended Stone in Fort Lauderdale is spooking him.
Yeah, throw him for a loop.
He's throwing him for a loop, and he may try to recover next week with the State of the Union, and that's probably what he's preparing to that speech right now.
Susan, and a lot of people want to hear, looking forward to that. They want to hear what he has to say. The Daily Caller, Susan, asked the president if the acting AG Whitaker, if he had communicated to the president that the Mueller probe was wrapping up. Trump says they haven't spoken about that, but did they have to? Because Whitaker went on TV and said as much.
Well, that's right. First of all, that was some sort of a message sending. We don't know. Was that intended to pressure the prosecutors? Was it intended to send a signal to witnesses in the case? It's almost over, so just hold out. Or, as you suggest, was it sending a message to the president? Many people seem to think that it was very inappropriate for him to have weighed in. It certainly seems highly unusual. Normally, the Justice Department would not talk in any such terms about an investigation like this and where it is. So it was unusual to the point of inappropriate. President Trump has been freaking out about the Mueller investigation since the moment it was started. He knows better than we know what it is that it's going to find. But, again, I just think Doug's point is really important here. This is a president who seems to be casting about, who has neither tactics nor strategy to face a moment in time where he's under challenge by never before, by not only Democrats in Congress, but increasingly Republicans on Capitol Hill have been pushing back against him on foreign policy. Dan Coats, by the way, not only the chief national intelligence officer now, a long-time, very conservative Republican senator on Capitol Hill. These are people Donald Trump appointed to run our intelligence agencies. These aren't, some crazy liberal Democrats that he can caricature for partisan reasons. These are solid conservative officials from his own party that he's now attacking. And again, I think the arrest of Roger Stone was very significant, but I go back to the fact on Friday, President Trump, basically the last time he was seen in public was probably the most humiliating moment of his presidency so far. He held out for more than a month. He put into turmoil the federal government, huge swaths of the United States, 800,000 people without paychecks. And what happened? He didn't get $1 from Nancy Pelosi. He was humiliated. And, we can see the president of the United States doesn't take well to being humiliated.
Very good point there. Doug, Caitlin Collins reporting late tonight that the president seethed watching the highlights of his intelligence chiefs testifying on Capitol Hill and then singling out the DNI director, Dan Coats, by name during a morning rant. When you hear that he's more upset by the coverage and the actual fact-based assessments, what are you thinking?
that Donald Trump's not fit to be president of the United States. That we've known that for a while. He goes into these kind of temper tantrums. He doesn't have any real close advisors. You either have to be a sycophant or a person who just does whatever he wants at every moment. He can't stand independent analysis. We've heard this from Rex Tillerson and General Mattis and General Kelly and now Coates. Anytime somebody tries to tell him the truth, tries to present facts that are going to help our country move forward in the 21st century, he recoils from it because he wants people to just say how wonderful he is, and he wants to pretend that the Mueller report is a witch hunt. Well, it isn't. Those FBI agents raiding Stone's home in Fort Lauderdale, they were real people. This is his. The chickens are coming home to roost for Donald Trump now, and he had drug it around for 2 years. Every day, practically, he was tweeting about Mueller. And that's why the wall never got built when he had a Republican Senate and Congress. And he had 2 years to do it, but he's been obsessed about the Russian investigation because he has guilt of some kind written all over him, and he can't get it out of his mind. Right now he's worried about it, and he might be feeling the end is near for him because Republicans are starting to defect, and he's sinking in the polls.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you, Susan. See you next time. Again, stay warm. Appreciate it. Oh, you're in Palm Springs, so you're good, Douglas.
Yeah, I know.
Don't rub it in. Don't rub it in. See you guys next time. Robert Mueller says a Russian troll farm used and changed documents from his team that weren't public as part of their disinformation campaign to discredit the investigation. Congressman Eric Swalwell reacts. There he is. He's next. So President Trump, in a new interview today, has a lot to say about the Mueller investigation. The headline, he says he'll take a hands-off approach and leave everything to the Justice Department. But he also says he could end the investigation if he wanted to. I want to talk about this with Congressman Eric Swalwell, a California Democrat who sits on both the Intelligence and the Judiciary committees. Very important committees and role there. Thank you, Congressman. Good to see you.
Good evening, Don, of course.
President Trump spoke to the Daily Caller tonight, and he says that he's going to leave the decision as to how to handle the Mueller report to the Justice Department. He also says he could have terminated everything if he wanted to, even adding that many people thought that he should do that. He hasn't ended it, but he certainly tried to undermine it.
Sounds like a guy going through all the stages of grief, right? Like, denial, anger, and now maybe acceptance that it's coming. I mean, he's done everything. He's done everything he can to undermine it. He's tampered with witnesses. He's obstructed justice. He's tried to dangle pardons out there. He put in place as the acting attorney general, someone we'll hear from on Friday, next Friday, in the Judiciary Committee, is a hired assassin essentially, who I think was brought in because of his views about taking out the Mueller investigation. So the best thing the president can do is to just, allow the investigation to continue.
You're talking about Whitaker?
Well, yeah, Whitaker's coming to Congress next week, but the president should just allow the investigation to continue, and then when it's done, make sure that it's fully transparent and released to the American people.
The GOP announced that their roster to sit on the House Intelligence Committee today. Democrats have been grumbling that they were dragging their feet. How soon could we see a vote to release the panel's witness transcripts to Mueller?
I hope that's soon. I know that's one of the top priorities of the chairman, Chairman Schiff, as well as all the members on the committee. We also have Michael Cohen coming next week before the committee. There's a lot of work that we have to do because we want to be a committee that protects the future, because we know the Russians are just as interested in attacking us in 2020 as they were in 2016 and 2018. So if we're going to protect the ballot box, we've got work to do, Don. And the focus, should be everything, all the resources we can devote to securing the ballot box and making the American people aware.
We're seeing another disinformation campaign, Congressman, from Russia, from a pro-Russian Twitter account trying to discredit Mueller, actually using information shared with defense attorneys in a case Mueller is prosecuting. What's your number one concern here?
Well, my number one concern here is that we have a country that attacked us, that does not want us to succeed, and as we are prosecuting that country, they're trying to make a mockery of the investigation by using information from that investigation to, basically undermine the investigation. And yet we have a president who goes overseas, and every time he goes overseas, he's acting like Tony Soprano going to a dark parking garage and meeting with, another leader from a different mob, as he does Vladimir Putin. Russia is not our friend. They are not worthy, because of what they just did in this Mueller investigation, of having a president who would give them an audience. And yet our president meets with them, in darkness, and doesn't tell the American people what was agreed upon, and that's a big problem.
You were on with my colleague Wolf this afternoon, and you say that you're close to making a decision about your 2020 plans. When Wolf asked you about it, you told him to give you just a few more minutes.
You're going to give me those minutes?
It's been about 311 minutes, give or take. I'm not that great with math, but 300 or so minutes.
He's got the receipts.
Any decision?
I'm getting close, Don, and I'll tell you why. It's because I have lived the promise of America as the first in my family to go to college. My parents believed if you work hard, you do better and dream bigger. And I see that that's not being fulfilled everywhere, on every block or on every floor of every building. And I think that I come from a generation that wants to go big, be bold, and do good, and I think that's missing in this field. Now, I have a wife and 2 kids under 2, so at this point it's just a family decision. My wife has a good job that she's worked hard for. Just getting childcare, just like most families. It's not easy, especially when you're running for president. But we're going to sort those things out and hopefully have an announcement about the future soon.
So you're leaning towards it?
I see a lot of green lights, Don, but again, there's a lot of pressure, on a young family, and that has to come first.
So you're saying there's a chance? I'm just kidding.
I'm telling you there's a chance. 1 in a million. Hopefully better than that.
Congressman, you're a good sport. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate
My pleasure.
it. Thank you. My next guest says Donald Trump called himself the king of Palm Beach. Inside information about life at President Trump's private club, Mar-a-Lago, since he has taken office. That's next.
41194.
New day, tomorrow morning starting at 6 Eastern on CNN.
Before he was president of the United States, Donald Trump called himself the king of Palm Beach. And a new book tells the inside story of his private club there. Let's bring in now Lawrence Leamer, the author of Mar-a-Lago, Inside the Gates of Power at Donald Trump's Presidential Palace. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you on.
Thank you.
This is fascinating. I have to get to it. I haven't read it yet, but I've read some stuff from it. I've been briefed on it. It seems I've been wondering for years what it's like to even go there and be there. I just want to read something from your book.
Please.
Okay? This was right at the beginning of Trump's presidency. He said Trump let the Secret Service know he intended to visit Mar-a-Lago regularly, and with all the people who would be running in and out of the club, they quickly recognized the immense challenges his request would create. Trump didn't seem to care what problems he presented to the Secret Service. He was used to getting whatever he wanted. He didn't care about the cost or the disruptions. So a lot of his identity is being the king of Palm Beach, correct?
Yeah, that's what he says, and he is the king. He changed this island. It used to be a kind of sedate, conservative place, kind of old money, old WASP money. He came and bowled his way in there, and there's a new elite, a kind of gilded, it's a gilded age. There are 40 billionaires in Palm Beach. He's one of them, and they're the people that matter, and they're the people that matter to his presidency in many ways.
Talk more about that.
Well, it's wealth. I mean, he doesn't care about class. He doesn't care about law. He cares about money. Money is what matters to this guy, and those are the people he wants around him, and those are the people he has. That's what Palm Beach is about.
Yeah, about having a lot of money.
Yes.
And extravagance? You said it used to be old money and quiet. Now.
Well, you want to join Mar-a-Lago? You could join. Anybody can join. It's $200,000. Okay.
It went up when he became president.
Yeah, but now it's $200,000.
Right.
So it's $14,000 a year, and it's $2,000 minimum food. Plus, you like to drink a few, so you got to pay for your drinks.
Right.
So maybe you're going to member for 5 years. Most of these people, you're not going to play tennis, you're not going to swim. So it's basically a dinner club, and it costs you. Figure it's about $5,000 every time you come for dinner. But what's that?
Yeah. Well, that's a common man.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a working class.
Exactly.
Man, right? Okay, I'm just checking. Right. So he was last there during Thanksgiving, right? The 20th through the 25th. Wasn't able to go for Christmas because of this government shutdown. You think that really bothered him?
I think it bothered him enormously. This is his spiritual home. He loves being there. He's created this world around him, Don, where people People tell him he's great. Wherever he walks, he's got people coming up to him saying, "You're great, Donald." He needs to get back. He's coming down there this weekend. It's going to be an extraordinary event this weekend when he's there. When he's there, everybody comes to the club. People fight to get there, to fight to get dinner reservations, because he sits on the veranda outside for his 3-hour dinners, and everybody's around him. The people are around. He just loves that.
He said because he loves the attention. Is he sitting there in the spotlight like, someone?
Listen, I was there this Easter weekend. We're there after 11 o'clock. Tony Holt Kramer, the trumpet, invited us for dinner there. After 11 o'clock, Don King, the boxing impresario, comes in. He's dressed as Uncle Sam. He sits down with Donald, talks to him right away. Donald gets up, and Don King follows him out and says, "The president, the great president, the great president." He screams at him as he goes out. And I'm thinking, this is the president. This is. I can't believe this. But that's so much in my book is like that. You read it and you think, could this be possibly true? But it is.
Yeah, you said that the president started out being viewed as a lowlife and a vulgar interloper, but the old society folks in Palm Beach, but soon he became the king, and it's because when you talk about how people, they all kiss, he said in a quote, "They all kiss my ass."
Yeah, that's his quote, not
That's
mine.
his quote. They all kiss my
Yeah.
ass. And he thought that the White House might be the same way as the people at Mar-a-Lago.
No, and now he says that he has no friends in the White House. He doesn't. So he goes down there, and he has these people that are constantly sucking up to him, and he loves it. He loves Palm Beach. It's his spiritual home.
This weekend, when it's
They're
cold,
going to be there.
No, this is going to be my until the Super Bowl. This is what I'm going to be doing. Lawrence, your book is out now, and it's called Mar-a-Lago: Inside the Gates of Power at Donald Trump's Presidential Palace. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. We've got new developments tonight in the Russia investigation, so we're devoting this entire hour to an in-depth look at all things Russia. The president is weighing in on the Mueller investigation in a new interview, and he's telling the Daily Caller that he'll leave decisions on the Mueller report to the Department of Justice. But he adds this. He says, I could have gotten involved in this. I could have terminated everything. I could have ended everything. I've chosen to stay. I've chosen to stay out of it, I should say. But I had the right to, as you know. I had the right, if I wanted to end everything. I could have just said, that's enough. Many people thought that's what I should do. Well, the president also had a lot to say about the arrest of his longtime ally, Roger Stone, saying he was very disappointed to see the arrest. His words, go down that way. All this while Robert Mueller is still hard at work. The special counsel is out with a new filing alleging more Russian interference this time, aimed directly at discrediting Mueller's investigation. A pro-Russian Twitter account allegedly used information from the criminal case Mueller brought against Russian social media company Concord Management and Consulting. Information that was not publicly available as part of a disinformation campaign against the Russia investigation. It's complicated, but we're going to break it down for you. We're going to start with Shimon Prokupecz. Shimon, good evening to you. So,
hey, Don.
Let's dig into this and help everyone understand. The president is weighing in on the arrest of his longtime ally, Roger Stone. Says the level of force used in the raid on Roger Stone was unusual. Is that true?
Well, here's the thing. I think what makes this so unusual is that the president is weighing in on an arrest of someone who is charged with activity, was questioned about activity surrounding the campaign, lied about that activity during the campaign. And that's what makes this so strange. Obviously, Roger Stone is his associate, has been friends with him for many years. And the fact that he's weighing in on this obviously should raise all sorts of concerns. It's within his right, certainly, if there's something going on with the FBI or any other law enforcement to raise issues about the way something is handled. But this is just different because it has a personal connection. Now, look, there are some people who will say that this raid was appropriate, the way the FBI went in. This is standard procedure, and it is in a lot of cases. But, you know, it's so rare that we get to see something like this. And I think that may be what is so shocking. You know, certainly Roger Stone has no history of violence. No one would expect the FBI to go in this fashion. We don't know all the information the FBI had and the reason why they chose to do it this way. There may be reasons, but it is true that in circumstances like this, when people are charged with nonviolent crimes, it's not always that the FBI goes in this way. They usually tell people to surrender.
Yeah.
They chose not to do that in this case, and they may have very good reason for doing that. We just don't know.
We don't know.
But you know who can know? The president. He could just ask Christopher Wray for a briefing, or the FBI or the Department of Justice to tell him, why did you guys do it this way? And they may tell him.
Yeah, but that doesn't that doesn't help him with his base.
Well,
So right, he wants to put it out there. He wants to tweet about it. I don't
Look,
like it.
the
It's
whole-
heavy-handed.
yeah.
Blah 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 blah.
And the whole point of doing this is discrediting the FBI and in some ways perhaps discrediting
There you
Mueller,
go.
right?
Yeah. Can we turn now to this new filing by the special counsel? What is Mueller saying here? Explain this to us.
Okay, so this is kind of, to kind of dumb it down. It's essentially, there is a Russian company, a bunch of Russians were indicted, disinformation campaign, hiring people to try and sow discord and interfere in the election process. And what happened is during the Mueller investigation, along with the Department of Justice, they decided to indict 13 Russians in connection with this, including a company called Concord Management, all in Russia. It's this information research agency. They were running this entire operation. So in an unusual move, the Department of Justice charges them. The company, out of nowhere, no one expected this, has decided that they are going to fight these charges. They are not in this country, but they, within their legal right, have the right to fight these charges, and in doing so are getting documents. And the person who owns this company is, as the government has alleged, is Putin's chef. It's this Russian who's very close to Vladimir Putin. And so he has hired a bunch of U.S. attorneys, and they've been going to court here in Washington, D.C., and fighting these charges. And as a result, the lawyers have been getting all sorts of documents from the Mueller team. Those documents have somehow wound up in the hands of Russians who have now used it to try and get it out there and try and cause all sorts of disinformation, a disinformation campaign essentially on the Mueller team, putting out these documents. They've also in some ways put out forged documents. The FBI says that these documents were published by someone in Russia. So that's essentially it. They have these documents. The Mueller team is fighting them because they want to be able to look at some other more very sensitive documents. And the Mueller team is saying, no, we don't want you to have access to this. We don't want your clients, the Russians, to get their hands on these sensitive documents because it's going to cause all sorts of national security issues.
So Mueller is trying, Shimon, to prevent sensitive information from being passed on to Russia. And there's a section in the filing that reads like this. It says, the sensitive discovery identifies uncharged individuals and entities that the government believes are continuing to engage in operations that interfere with lawful U.S. government functions like those activities charged in the indictment. So what does that tell us? Could there be more indictments on the way?
Yeah, certainly there could be. There are people that the FBI, the U.S. government, intelligence services are watching in Russia. This all has to do with the interference campaign. We've heard the FBI, we've heard the intelligence services say that they are concerned about 2020. And it looks like when you read this that the FBI is monitoring a lot of this. They are in on these guys. And they're afraid that if they start releasing this information, that the Russians are going to know who they're looking at, right? Who the FBI is looking at. They're more concerned about also is the methods. They do not want in any way to disclose the methods by which they are able to monitor some of this activity. Look, it's very clear that when you talk to the FBI, publicly, privately, there's a lot of concern around 2020. And I think what we're seeing in this case, one of the limits and limitations of a case like this with national security is that the FBI and the Department of Justice are always afraid to reveal too much information. And that is sometimes why we don't see charges brought in these kinds of cases. And simply what they're telling us here is like, look, they're telling the judge, we have to be very careful here. We cannot release a lot of this information because we have active investigations. And if we reveal this information, national security is going to be risked here.
Thank you very much, Shimon. I appreciate that. I want to bring in now Michael Isikoff. He is the author of Russian Roulette, the inside story of Putin's war on America and the election of Donald Trump. Max Boot is here as well. He's the author of The Corrosion of Conservatism, Why I Left the Right. Gentlemen, so good to see both of you on this chilly evening here. Max, you first. The president says that he could have ended the investigation, chose not to do that. I don't know. He wants credit. Does he want credit for not ending the investigation into his own campaign?
Right. He wants credit for not obstructing justice any more than he's already obstructed justice. I mean, remember, the New York Times has reported that on several occasions he tried to fire special counsel Mueller and had to be talked out of it by aides, but he was very seriously attempting to do that. We know that he did fire FBI Director Comey. He did fire Attorney General Sessions. So he has obstructed justice, but he is not totally into the investigation, which would have been hard for him to do in any case because it's not clear that he can actually pull the plug, that it would have to be somebody at the Justice Department. Up until recently, it would have been Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, and he probably would have quit sooner than doing it. And the reason why Donald Trump didn't try to do that was because he saw what happened when he actually fired FBI Director Comey. As a result of that, he got a special counsel on his case, and his aides told him that if he fired Mueller, the situation would be that he would be ripe for impeachment. So that's why he didn't actually do that. It's not that he deserves some kind of credit for observing the rule of law. It was just a matter of self-preservation on his part.
Got it. Do you want to weigh in? But I have a question.
Well, add that he has had no hesitation in taking potshots at the Mueller investigation repeatedly on Twitter, talking about the witch hunt, the Mueller's angry Democrats. So he's done everything he could to stir up his people, his base, towards animosity towards the Mueller investigation and to discredit it. But, he realizes the political limits of going too far and actually trying to fire Mueller.
So he says that he hasn't spoken to the acting AG, Whitaker, about this. But then he adds, this a term that I've been hearing a lot from conservative media, process crimes. These are just process crimes. It doesn't have anything. He said, I would say they think that after almost 2 years, it certainly should be process crimes or process, questions. The answer is different than what you thought it might be. And some people say they lost their memory or lack of memory, which a lot of people can understand that too. Are we just talking about process crimes here?
Well, in some cases, if one considers lying to the FBI and lying to Congress a process crime, I suppose it fits. There are core crimes that Mueller has indicted against the Russians who hacked the DNC, against the troll farm that manipulated American social media. In fact, that's what you were just talking about with Shimon. It's the troll farm company that Mueller had charged and whose lawyers passed along some of this material. But it is true that Mueller has not yet charged anybody in Trump's orbit with conspiring with the Russians. Mm-hmm. And, we're going to have to wait and see. I think everybody believes, most people believe we are at the end game here. And Mueller is either going to have yet one more indictment to bring or it's simply a report. We have to wait and see what his full evidence is. But, these crimes, lying to federal investigators, lying to Congress, are not, they are felonies. People can go to prison for them.
And we're seeing people actually go to prison for them.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mac.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And if I could just say a word in favor of process crimes, remember, this is why Richard Nixon and Bill Clinton were impeached for perjury, for obstruction of justice, for witness tampering. And when Bill Clinton was being impeached for lying under oath about his relationship with Monica Lewinsky, Republicans weren't saying, oh, these are just process crimes. They were saying, no, this is a threat to the rule of law. And I firmly believe that, because you cannot have a president and his close associates obstructing justice. You cannot have them lying to the FBI or to Congress. This goes at the very heart of our democracy. Our legal system would not function if people thought they could get away with perjury and obstruction. So this is not something that's minor or trivial. This is actually a high crime and misdemeanor if it's committed by the President of the United States.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned this system a moment ago, Michael. Let's talk about this filing by Mueller this afternoon. Russians waging this disinformation campaign against the Mueller investigation using these documents that Shimon talked about.
Yeah.
They got from the Russia-related case Mueller is prosecuting. What do you say? What's your assessment of that?
Look, what's interesting about this is the whole scenario was odd to begin with. Mueller indicts this troll farm in the Internet Research Agency owned by the Concord Management, Putin's chef. Nobody expected those Russians to show up in federal court in the United States and stand trial. Mm-hmm. But they hire these high, aggressive lawyers mounting this defense on their behalf, even though, they were never going to show up in court anyway. What was the purpose of fighting in court? It was very clear, and Mueller's people sort of were onto this from the get-go, that the whole purpose was to get discovery so the Russians could figure out how the FBI and Mueller's prosecutors got onto them, how they were able, in a very detailed indictment that named specific individuals, specific dates, who was doing what, who was setting up what accounts in the United States, phony accounts on Facebook and Twitter. The Russians wanted to know how the FBI figured that out. So the whole purpose here was to get access to the discovery so they could pass it back to the Russians in St.
Straight out of Russia's playbook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, it is not surprising what Mueller filed today that, yes, in fact, that's exactly what they were doing with the discovery that was handed over to the lawyers. It made its way back to the Russians. The Russians were using it to discredit the Mueller investigation. This was all part of the larger Russian disinformation campaign that, began during the election and from all, appearances is going on till today.
Yet there's, the president downplays Russia's influence on our politics. Max, the former Green Party candidate Jill Stein was on CNN this evening. She said she was asked about that dinner that she attended with Putin and Michael Flynn, and if Mueller has reached out to her. I want you to check this out.
You say no one from Robert Mueller's team has reached out to you, no document requests, nothing from you or anyone that works for you, just to be clear, because I think that's important for people to know.
Yes, absolutely. And if there was a shred of, wrongdoing on my part, Mueller would certainly know about it because Michael Flynn has turned state's evidence. So, and besides, I was completely public throughout about exactly what I was doing, tweeting about it, my speech to a meeting at RT, which was attended by Jesse Ventura, by Rocky Anderson, the former mayor. It was a meeting of many peace advocates, which is how I happened to be there.
So we know there was a disinformation campaign to help Jill Stein, but Mueller hasn't reached out to her. Does that say anything to you?
Well, I mean, if she's telling the truth, and we don't know if she is or not, but assuming that she is, that would suggest that she is not in the special counsel's crosshairs, and there is no suggestion that the Russians were actively colluding with her, even though they might have been helping her. So we don't know what was going on there, but clearly there was, it's striking for me with what you're talking about here, with Putin's chef and his company still engaging in this disinformation. We heard yesterday from the intelligence chiefs testifying in Congress that the Russians are still up to their old tricks. I mean, this is a threat that has not gone away, and what we've seen repeatedly in Europe as well as in the United States is that the Russians will use both the far left, people like Jill Stein, and the far right, people like Donald Trump, to try to undermine Western democracies. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're directly in collusion with those campaigns, but they certainly want to promote the extremes. And oh, by the way, the extremes on both the left and the right tend to be largely pro-Russian. And that's something that we need to be very worried about going forward in the future.
Michael, Max, thank you both. I appreciate your time. No one can forget the infamous Access Hollywood tape that threatened to sink the campaign of then candidate Donald Trump back on October 7th of 2016. Inside 1 hour, WikiLeaks started releasing hacked emails from the Clinton campaign. We're going to have new details on how that happened. That's next.